Welcome to understand SDG 10, Reduced Inequalities. Reduce inequality within and among countries, ensuring no one is left behind.
All right, today we're jumping into one of the biggest, most important missions on the planet, the UN's Sustainable Development Goal 10. You can think of it as a global game plan for tackling one of the world's toughest nuts to crack, inequality.
And the core idea, the big promise behind all of this, is super simple, but also incredibly powerful. Leave no one behind. Now, this isn't just some catchy slogan. It is the absolute guiding principle for the entire 2030 agenda, and it's the very soul of SDG 10. It means that any progress we make has to reach everybody, not just a lucky few.
So, what's the official goal here? It's to reduce inequality within and among countries. But here's the thing you've got to remember. This is not just about the money gap between the rich and the poor. Nope, it's about going after inequality in all its shapes and sizes. Whether that's based on your income, your gender, your age, where you live, you name it.
Okay, so if we're going to figure out how to fight inequality, we first have to understand what we're up against. And it basically comes in two main flavors. On one side, you've got what's called vertical inequality. The easiest way to picture this is like a ladder. It's the distance between the folks at the very top and the folks at the very bottom, usually in terms of wealth and income. Then, on the other side, you have horizontal inequality. This is totally different. It's not about top versus bottom. It's about the gaps between different groups of people who share some kind of identity.
And when we say groups, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about unfair differences based on things like your gender, your age, if you have a disability, your race, and yeah, even just where you happen to live. Think about the difference in opportunities between someone in a major city versus someone in a small rural village. These kinds of divides can be woven right into the fabric of a society.
To really see what this looks like on the ground, let's zoom in on a specific case study, Pakistan. The country's battle with SDG 10 is one of its biggest development challenges, precisely because these inequalities are so deep and so systemic.
People often talk about this challenge using a really powerful phrase, the two Pakistans problem. And that phrase really hits home, right? It paints this picture of a massive gap in development between different parts of the country, creating completely different worlds for people depending on where they're born.
Now this visual really drives home that vertical inequality. Just look at the consumption gap. The wealthiest 20% of the population consumes 1.5 times as much as the poorest 80%. Just let that sink in for a second. A small group of 18 million people are out-consuming a massive group of 72 million people. That is just a wild imbalance.
Okay, so now let's flip over to horizontal inequality. And honestly, the numbers here are just as shocking. According to the 2024 Global Gender Gap Report, out of 146 countries ranked, Pakistan came in at 145. Yeah, right at the very bottom. That number alone tells you this is a massive issue. And you can see exactly where this gap bites the hardest. In economic life. Female participation in the workforce is down around 24%, which is one of the lowest rates in the entire world. On top of that, women own less than 3% of the land. That's a huge barrier to their economic power and independence. And this brings us right back to that two Pakistans problem, the regional gaps. This chart is showing something called the Human Development Index. It's basically a scorecard for a region's health, education, and standard of living. And look at the province of Balochistan. It's just consistently lagging far, far behind the national average. This is that idea of two Pakistans, laid bare in the data. And if you want a number that just stops you in your tracks, here it is. 23. Of the 56 poorest districts in the entire country, a jaw-dropping 23 of them, nearly half, are all located in that one province, Balochistan. We are not talking about a small difference here. This is a massive, concentrated pocket of poverty.
So the challenges are huge, right? But what's actually being done about it? Well, Pakistan has put together a specific set of tools, a policy toolkit, if you will, to try and fight back against these inequalities. And the strategy is basically a two-pronged attack. It's designed to hit both kinds of inequality we've been talking about. They've got one set of policies for individuals, that's to tackle the vertical inequality, and another set for entire regions, to get at that horizontal inequality.
All right, so their main weapon against that vertical income-based inequality is a program called the Benazir Income Support Program, or BISP for short. This is their big flagship social safety net. And what it does is pretty straightforward. It gives cash directly to the poorest families in the country. But this is where the design gets really smart. Check this out. First, by giving cash to the poorest families, boom, you're directly tackling vertical inequality. But then, and this is the really clever part, they give that money directly to the women in those households. So in one move, they're also tackling horizontal gender inequality by putting economic power right into their hands. Pretty brilliant, right?
Okay, so that's for people. What about those huge gaps between regions? For that, Pakistan has a different tool. It's called the National Finance Commission Award, and its whole purpose is to try and level the playing field between the different provinces.
And there was this huge, game-changing shift back in 2010. See, before then, the central government just handed out money based on one thing: population. More people, more money. Simple, but not always fair. But in 2010, they threw that old system out and brought in a much smarter, multi-part formula.
And this table shows you how that new formula works. Now, yeah, population is still the biggest piece of the pie, but it's not the only piece anymore. Look at this. Now they factor in things like poverty and how spread out the population is. This was a very deliberate move designed to push more resources toward poorer, less populated provinces, like Balochistan.
So you've got a policy for income gaps and a policy for regional gaps. On paper, it looks pretty good. So why? Why is inequality still such a massive, stubborn problem? What's going on here?
Well, this quote really gets to the heart of it. You might see some numbers that look like progress, but they often hide a much deeper, tougher reality called elite capture. It's this idea that a small, super powerful group, an elite, grabs a huge, unfair share of all the wealth and resources and basically bends the system to keep it that way.
And that brings us to the central problem, the real tension here. On one hand, Pakistan has the right kind of policies, right? You've got BISP going after vertical inequality and the NFC award going after horizontal inequality. But, and this is the big but, having a good plan on paper means almost nothing if you can't actually make it work on a massive scale.
So all of this whole case study, it leaves us with a really critical question. And it's not just a question for Pakistan. It's for any country out there that's fighting the same fight. So, here's what I want to leave you with. When a country seems to have all the right tools, all the right policies aimed at fairness, but deep inequality just refuses to budge, is the problem really the plan? Or is it the underlying power structure that just won't let that plan ever truly succeed?
Thanks for your time to learn, earn, and lead. This is Mohammad Zishan Awan, Advocate High Court. To join Vision 2047, please register with us and be part of the transformation.